Hello, this is Mr. Maximus Film, and what you're seeing here is a cow. And the cow can only mean one thing. More cows. And fields, which is all part of Pink Floyd's fourth album, Atom Heart Mother, released 1970, their first album of the 70s. And as most of you probably know if you're a Pink Floyd fan, Pink Floyd released their Why Pink Floyd campaign, and of course I did not buy that because a lot of it seems like a load of junk compared to these faithful replicas that I already have. And the remasters sound exactly the same in my opinion. I previewed some of them on iTunes. They sound exactly the same. I can't tell any difference, so I'm fine with my old set. So please post a comment or something about what you think of the new campaign. The immersion box set for Dark Side of the Moon seems like, a load of junk. Too much frou-frous, scarves, and marbles. I don't need any of that stuff. I got my coasters and my poster. That's all I need in a box set. But, whatever. The live recording, though, the live recordings that they put on their YouTube channel, though, were pretty cool. And I might get the Experience Edition of Dark Side of the Moon just so I can listen to those live recordings of Dark Side of the Moon, which sounded very cool, and in some places even better than the studio version, in my opinion. I really like what they did with Breathe live. But right now, we're looking at Atom Heart Mother in my series of the Pink Floyd discography. It's been a while since I did my last Pink Floyd review. My last album review was the review of my favorite album currently, Kid A by Radiohead. You can go check that out. And I'm wasting lots of time rambling, and let's get into Atom Heart Mother. One of the things that this album really divides fans a lot. You either really like this album or you really hate this album. There's a lot of fans that really like this album, that think it's really cool, and a lot of fans that think it's mediocre and poor and horrible. Now, when you listen to this after Umaguma, Pink Floyd is back on track with this album. This album puts the Floyd back on the right course. This album is more musical than their past two albums, More and Umaguma. It's much more musical. It's much more easy to listen to. And it's structured in halves. The first half is just the Atom Heart Mother suite. The second half is composed of 4 songs, some of them solo compositions by some of the band members, much like Umaguma, and such. So, Atom Heart Mother, the suite at the beginning, is very interesting. It's sort of the first glimpse of the Pink Floyd epic, and one of the first examples of the prog rock epic. It has this overlying motif with horns, and the horns take the center stage, and they sort of are the horns in Atom Heart Mother, the suite, are very prominent, and they're sort of the main focus of the entire thing. And it does sort of sound like a soundtrack to like a Western film or something. And it's very long in length, and each section drones on for a very long time. It gets a little boring in some places. It kind of drones on and on. Some of the motifs are repeated a lot. There's this one part where there's a cello solo, and it goes on forever. But my favorite part in the Atom Heart Mother suite is when the band just takes the center stage in the middle with an improvisational jam, and that's one of David Gilmour's best guitar solos. It's really funky, it's really sweet, it's just groovy, for lack of a better word, and it's really cool, and it's really improvised the entire time, and it sounds really funky and weird. But then it kind of gets ruined at the end of this with this cheesy chorus that comes in and does these weird vocals that don't really make any sense. And then it gets really weird. The vocals sort of take the center stage, and then the vocalists, the vocals are not performed by David Gilmour, it's this choir, and they sort of take the center stage, and then it gets into this really weird, sort of avant-garde, Revolution 9-esque sort of sound collage in the middle. And then it comes back at the end with the original motif. The song is good in some places, like I talked about. That jam was really good. The actual motif at the beginning is exciting, especially when the drums come in. It's really cool. But overall, it can get really boring especially because it's an instrumental. There's no vocalist. There's no surge. It's not the best prog rock epic I've ever heard, but it's decent. And then the second side of the album, pardon me, my camera skills are awful. But the second side of the album starts with "If," which is one of the those Roger Waters acoustic ballads, sort of like Grantchester Meadows, but to a smaller scale. It's he's pouring his heart out in the song. He's talking about a lot of his fears and hopes and dreams. The vocals are a little shaky. He doesn't have the best vocals. His vocals on Grantchester Meadows is a lot better. Are a lot better. But on this, it is interesting to hear the more emotional side of Roger Waters. Then I think we get into Summer of '68, which is Richard Wright's composition. Very good. Hearing that song made me buy this album. I love that song. It's just very light and floaty and happy, even though it's talking about prostitutes and stuff. But it's light, floaty, and happy, and the piano in that song is really great. And when it gets into the chorus section with the "How Do You Feel," that's really cool as well. And it has some reprises of the Adam Hart Mother horns in it. Then it gets into "Fat Old Sun," and another great song. It's very light. A lot of these songs on the second side of the album are very light, and it has a great David Gilmour's guitar solo at the end. Just rings it in, and it's really good. And it comes in with this organ. It just all fills up. It's very summery. This album is very summery, even though we're getting the fall. But it's very summery. And then you get Alan's Psychedelic Breakfast, which is sort of, as most Pink Floyd fans know, is just the sounds of this guy eating breakfast kind of noisily and violently. Most violent breakfast I've ever heard. And then they inject it, quote unquote, they interfuse it with little melodies and ramblings and doodlings. It isn't the best thing ever, but it takes a while to get into it. And finally, the last doodling is really good. And the last sort of band jam at the end is actually worth listening to, but everything before that gets a little boring. So now I have a 10-point scale that I rate albums with. It's just a bit easier, so I don't have to get into decimals and stuff. So I give this album a 7 out of 10. Just because the Adam Hart Mother Suite can get a bit rambling and boring in some places, and the motifs are repeated a little too much, and Alan's Psychedelic Breakfast is not the best thing I've ever heard in my life. It feels a bit unfinished, but the ballads and the acoustic solo compositions in the middle are pretty good. They are pretty good Floyd material. So this is Adam Hart Mother. Getting into the packaging, of course, I have the not the white pink. I have the "Oh By the Way" version, which is discontinued now. It's like the original sleeve. It has the cow in the front. They did the cow, the famous cow, because they wanted they were getting too much associated with psychedelic compositions, and they wanted to just put something mundane and plain on the cover, and so they put a cow and Adam Hart Mother on the spine. More cows in the back. Even though it's cows and it's so mundane, it does seem a bit psychedelic, just this cow staring at you. It's very thought-provoking. Just this field with cows. Track listing up there. Focus my camera. And that's the track listing. Pardon me. And that is Adam Hart Mother. So, 7 out of 10. It's a very solid album. And now, once again, we have another Pink Floyd album out of the way. And next time, we will be doing metal. So that is Adam Hart Mother, and metal will come next. And I have something to say about metal, but we'll get into that later. But this is Pink Floyd. Tell me what you think about the Why Pink Floyd campaign. This is Mr. Maximus Film, and I will talk to you guys later.